A former slot technician just revealed something that could change the way you gamble forever. His name is David Chen, and he spent 7 years as a certified slot technician for one of the largest casino operators in Nevada. What he's about to share comes from internal programming data, pair sheets that list exact return percentages, and conversations with floor managers who openly discussed which machines they positioned to target tourists and casual players. David isn't here to sell you a system or promise you'll win. He's here to expose which 8 machines have the absolute worst player odds and which 3 machines actually give you a legitimate fighting chance. The casino floor layout you walk through isn't random. It's designed with mathematical precision to hide the better games and promote the ones that extract maximum revenue. First, you'll learn about 8 specific machines you should walk past every single time. Then David will reveal the 3 games he'd actually play with his own money, and he'll explain exactly how to find them in your casino. The information gets darker as we go deeper, because the final 2 machines on the avoid list represent something David calls predatory by design. But we're starting with the most popular series in modern casinos, the one you've definitely seen, probably played, and almost certainly lost money on. Machine number 1, Lightning Link, any variant. You'll find this game everywhere from the Vegas Strip to your local tribal casino. The cabinets are unmistakable with their curved screens, vibrant colors, and constant sound effects echoing across the floor. Lightning Link has become the most popular slot series in America, and that popularity isn't an accident. During his time as a technician, David had to restock the ticket printer paper on these machines 3 times more frequently than other games. That's not because people were winning, it's because of the sheer volume of play. These machines stay occupied nearly 20 hours per day in busy casinos, and all that activity generates an enormous amount of tickets for small payments, most of them worth less than the player spent to trigger the payout. Here's what David learned from accessing the pair sheets, the internal documents that list exact programming specifications. The base game return to player percentage on Lightning Link typically runs between 86 and 88% on the penny denomination, which is what most people play. That means for every $100 you feed into the machine, you're mathematically expected to get back $86 to $88. The casino keeps $12 to $14 from every 100 you wager, and that edge compounds rapidly over time. But the real deception isn't just the return percentage. It's how the game creates the illusion of frequent winning. The free game's bonus triggers approximately every 100 to 150 spins, which sounds generous until you analyze what those bonuses actually pay. Most free game sessions return between 10 and 40 times your bet. If you're betting 50 cents per spin, you might spend $50 to $75 in base game spins to trigger a bonus that pays $12. The machine erupts with music and graphics. You feel like you won. You just lost $60 in that cycle. The hold and spin feature is even more insidious. This is the one where you need to land 6 or more special orbs to fill the screen with prizes. According to the par sheets David reviewed, landing 6 orbs happens roughly once every 250 to 300 spins. Landing enough orbs to win anything substantial, meaning more than 50 times your bet, happens once every several thousand spins. But the game constantly teases you with 5 orbs, just one short of triggering the real bonus potential. Those near misses aren't accidents. They're programmed to occur at specific frequencies to keep you playing. David remembers a regular player named Maria, a woman in her early 60s who truly believed she was due for a grand jackpot because she'd hit multiple minor bonuses over several weeks. She'd won the hold and spin feature 8 times in 1 month, and each time she collected between $15 and $40. She interpreted this as evidence the machine was getting ready to pay big. One Saturday afternoon, David watched her lose $3,200 in a single session, chasing a major payout that never came. She left the casino in tears, and the machine she'd been playing showed exactly the hold percentage the par sheet predicted, right around 13%. Lightning Link uses multiple bet configurations that confuse the actual cost per spin. You think you're betting 30 cents, but you're actually wagering $1.50 because of the way lines and multipliers stack. The screen doesn't make this clear, and most players don't realize how quickly their bankroll depletes. Machine number 2, Dragon Link. Dragon Link is Lightning Link's sister series, and every metric David tracked during his 7 years told him this game performs even worse for players. The cabinets look similar, the gameplay feels familiar, but the volatility rating runs significantly higher. Slot manufacturers use an internal volatility scale that typically ranges from 1 to 100, with higher numbers meaning wilder swings between wins and losses. Dragon Link consistently scores between 92 and 95 on that scale, compared to Lightning Link's 78 to 82. That difference might sound technical, but it translates directly into how fast you lose money and how rarely you experience wins large enough to recover your losses. The return to player percentage mirrors Lightning Link at 86 to 88% on low denominations, but the distribution of that return follows a completely different pattern, where Lightning Link gives you frequent, small bonuses that create the illusion of action. Dragon Link spaces out its bonuses and makes them more volatile. You might trigger the hold and spin feature and win 8 times your bet, or you might win 500 times your bet. That extreme variance sounds exciting until you realize the math behind it. The par sheets David reviewed showed that Dragon Link's grand jackpot triggers approximately once every 800 to 1,000 hours of continuous play. Most casual players don't accumulate anywhere near that amount of time, which means you're playing a game where the feature that could actually put you ahead almost certainly won't happen during your session. David accessed monthly performance reports that showed actual hold percentages for every machine on the floor, and Dragon Link consistently appeared in the 14 to 16% range. That means the casino kept $14 to $16 from every 100 wagered. Over a typical session where someone cycles $3,000 through the machine, betting $2 per spin, that player statistically loses between $420 and $480. The machine might deliver that loss through steady decline, or it might give you a $200 win followed by a $600 losing streak, but the destination remains mathematically predetermined. The bonus rounds demonstrate the volatility problem clearly. Dragon Link's hold and spin can pay anywhere from 5 times to 5,000 times your bet, and that massive range creates a psychological trap. A player named James won $8,000 on Dragon Link during his first visit to the casino where David worked. James hit a combination of gold symbols during hold and spin that filled most of the screen, triggering multiple jackpot levels simultaneously. The machine celebrated for nearly 2 minutes. Other players gathered to watch. James took a selfie with his ticket. He told David this was the greatest moment of his gambling life. James came back the next 3 weekends trying to repeat that win. David saw him on the floor each time, always at Dragon Link, always betting the same $250 per spin he'd been betting when he won. By the 4th weekend, James had given back the $8,000 and lost an additional $3,500 chasing the same lightning strike. The power sheet data explained exactly why this happened. That $8,000 win represented an outcome that occurs roughly once every 12,000 spins at James's bet level. The probability of hitting it twice in a month approached lottery odds, but the memory of winning created an irrational belief that he'd found a hot game or possessed some special timing. The psychological manipulation extends beyond the math. Dragon Link employs what the industry calls win celebration technology, where the machine's response to your payout is carefully calibrated based on the win size. A $50 win on a $2 bet triggers the same music, graphics, and screen takeover that a $500 win does. Your brain registers both as significant victories, even though one barely covers the previous 25 spins you lost. Meanwhile, losses occur silently. The reels spin, they stop, your credit meter decreases, and the machine gives you no feedback. This asymmetric celebration pattern makes wins feel more frequent and significant than they actually are, while losses become forgettable background noise. David eventually started tracking how long players stayed at Dragon Link compared to other games. The average session length ran 42% longer than comparable games with similar bet levels, and player interviews conducted by casino marketing revealed why. Players described Dragon Link as exciting, action-packed, and full of potential. They remembered their bonuses in vivid detail, but couldn't accurately recall how much they'd spent. The volatility created memorable peaks that overshadowed the valleys, and the casino exploited that psychological quirk deliberately. Now, machine number 3 is going to surprise you because it's considered a classic game that many players trust implicitly. The brand recognition runs so deep that people assume it must be fair, but the newest versions of this franchise represent some of the worst player odds David encountered in his entire career. The original machines from 20 years ago had return percentages around 92 to 94%. The modern versions sitting on casino floors right now run as low as 85 to 88%, and most players have no idea they're playing a completely different game than the one that built the brand's reputation. We're talking about Wheel of Fortune, and what's been done to this trusted name represents everything wrong with modern slot design. Machine number 3, Wheel of Fortune 3D and 4D versions. The Wheel of Fortune brand carries trust built over decades of television exposure and original slot machines that treated players relatively fairly. Walk into any casino in America and mention Wheel of Fortune to a player over 50, and you'll likely hear a story about the original 3-reel versions from the late 90s and early 2000s. Those machines had returned to player percentages documented between 92 and 94%, and the wheel spin bonus, while still favoring the house, occurred frequently enough and paid fairly enough that players could sustain longer sessions without catastrophic losses. David worked on those original cabinets during his first year as a technician, and the par sheets told a straightforward story. The house had an edge, but it wasn't predatory. Then IGT released the 3D and 4D versions, and everything changed. The new cabinets feature massive curved screens, elaborate graphics, and the same familiar wheel mounted on top. But the internal programming bears almost no resemblance to the originals. Documentation. David accessed during a firmware update showed return percentages between 85 and 88%, a reduction of 4 to 9 percentage points from the games that built the brand's reputation. That difference translates to the casino, keeping an additional $4 to $9 from every 100 wagered, and over time, over thousands of spins, that mathematical gap becomes devastating. The wheel spin bonus now triggers approximately once every 250 spins instead of the original's 150. When you do hit it, the wheel itself has been reweighted in ways that favor lower outcomes. The original machines had relatively even distribution across the wheel segments. The newer versions use what the industry calls graduated weighting, where the physical or digital wheel has more stops on low-value segments than high-value segments, even though they appear equal in size visually. Landing on the 1,000 times bet segment or the jackpot wedge occurs exponentially less frequently than landing on the 20 or 40 times bet segments. But you can't tell that by looking at the wheel. It appears balanced. It isn't. The most common outcome when you trigger the wheel bonus is landing on the free spins wedge, which sounds valuable until you track what those free spins actually return. David documented typical free spin bonuses delivering between 20 and 40 times the triggering bet. If you're wagering $2 per spin, you spent approximately $500 in base gameplay to trigger a feature that pays $60. The machine erupts in celebration. The wheel spins with dramatic music. Pat Sajak's voice congratulates you through the speakers. Your brain interprets this as winning, but you just participated in a financial transaction where you traded $500 for $60. David was present in the technician bay when his supervisor installed a software update on the Wheel of Fortune 4D machines. The floor manager made a comment he clearly thought was private, saying the new software package was the casino's best friend because players trusted the brand name without questioning whether the game had changed. That moment crystallized something David had been noticing throughout his career. Casinos weren't just exploiting mathematical edges. They were exploiting emotional connections and brand loyalty, deliberately maintaining familiar exteriors while fundamentally altering the internal programming to extract more money. A woman named Patricia became David's clearest example of how this exploitation operates in real time. Patricia was 73 years old, a retired teacher who loved watching Wheel of Fortune on television every evening. When her local casino installed the 4D version, she started playing exclusively on that machine, betting $1 per spin, which she considered conservative. She played 3 afternoons per week for approximately 4 hours per session. David encountered her regularly during his floor checks, and she'd always mention how much she loved the show and how the slot machine made her feel connected to something familiar and comforting. Patricia tracked her play religiously using her player's club card, and after 8 months, she asked David if he could help her understand her statement. She'd lost just over $15,000 during that period. She'd triggered the wheel bonus 47 times according to the casino's records, but her total bonus payouts combined reached only $6,400. She couldn't reconcile why she felt like she was winning bonuses regularly, but losing so much money overall. David couldn't tell her the truth he knew from the par sheets, that she was playing a machine with an 87% return rate, that her 47 bonuses had cost her approximately $11,750 in base game losses to trigger, and that the math made her outcome not just predictable, but inevitable. The psychological manipulation runs deeper than the math alone suggests. Wheel of Fortune 4D uses near-miss programming on the wheel itself, where the wheel stops one position away from major prizes with statistically impossible frequency. You'll land one segment to the left or right of the top jackpot wedge multiple times per session, creating the impression that you almost won something significant. These near misses are programmed events designed to maintain hope and extend playtime. The wheel isn't stopping naturally, it's stopping where the algorithm determines it should stop to optimize the casino's revenue per player hour, while keeping you engaged enough to continue playing. David reviewed documentation showing that even when players hit the wheel bonus, the expected value remains negative when accounting for the cost. To trigger it, on Wheel of Fortune 4D, you're essentially paying 200 to 250 times your bet for something that returns an average of 20 to 50 times your bet. That's not gambling with an edge against you. That's paying dramatically more than something is worth and celebrating the transaction because of how it's presented. And speaking of trusted brands that have been redesigned to favor the house even more dramatically, Machine number 4 takes everything wrong with the Wheel of Fortune redesign and applies it to another franchise that players love, one that built its reputation on being the most popular game in slot history before the casino industry figured out how to weaponize that popularity against the people who made it successful. We're about to discuss Buffalo, and what you're about to learn will change how you see every variation of this game sitting on casino floors right now. Machine number 4, Buffalo. All variants after 2013. The original Buffalo slot machine appeared on casino floors in 2008, and within 18 months it became the most played game in slot history. Players loved the free spin feature, the stacked wilds, the potential for massive multipliers, and most importantly, the game felt fair. David worked on those original cabinets throughout 2010 and 2011, and the pair sheets showed return to player percentages hovering around 93%. The free games triggered roughly every 200 to 250 spins, and when they hit, they paid substantial amounts frequently enough that players could recover losses and occasionally walk away ahead. The casino made money because of volume, not because of predatory programming. Then Aristocrat, the manufacturer, recognized they were sitting on the most valuable brand in slot gaming, and they began releasing variants that kept the name and imagery while systematically dismantling everything that made the original fair. Machine number 4 is Buffalo Gold, Buffalo Grand, Buffalo Diamond, Buffalo Extreme, and every other variant released after 2013. These games represent the blueprint for how modern slot manufacturers exploit brand loyalty while degrading the player experience to maximize revenue extraction. Buffalo Gold launched in 2014, and David was part of the installation team that placed 30 of these machines on his casino's floor. During the training session, the Aristocrat representative walked the technicians through the new features: the Gold Buffalo collection mechanic, the expanded reels, the improved graphics. What the representative didn't emphasize was that the return-to-player percentage had dropped to approximately 87%, a 6-point reduction from the original that would cost players an additional $6 per 100 wagered over the lifetime of their play. The Gold Buffalo collection feature exemplifies how modern machines disguise worse math behind the appearance of additional opportunities. Landing gold Buffalo symbols in the base game feels like progress, like you're building towards something valuable, but the collection mechanic exists primarily to trigger more frequently than the standard free games while paying substantially less when it does trigger. David analyzed par sheets showing the Gold Buffalo feature activating roughly every 150 to 200 spins, which sounds generous compared to the original Buffalo's 250. Players interpreted this increased frequency as the game being more generous, not understanding that each trigger paid an average of 15 to 30 times their bet instead of the original's 50 to 150 times. The free games on Buffalo Gold, when they finally trigger through the traditional scatter symbol method, occur approximately every 300 spins at standard bet configurations. That's 50 spins longer than the original, meaning you're spending more money for the same feature. When you do hit free games, the potential maximum remains similar to the original. You can still win several thousand times your bet if you catch perfect stacked wilds with retriggers, but the frequency of those significant wins decreased according to every metric David tracked. He documented hundreds of free game bonuses on Buffalo Gold machines over a 2-year period, and 73% of them paid less than 50 times the triggering bet. The massive wins still occurred, but so rarely that chasing them became mathematically catastrophic for most players. Buffalo Grand added a progressive jackpot element layered on top of the Buffalo Gold framework, and the pair sheets revealed exactly how that progressive was funded. The base game return to player percentage dropped another percentage point to 86% to feed the progressive meters. Players saw jackpot amounts climbing on the screen and interpreted that as added value, not recognizing they were paying for that progressive through reduced returns on every single spin. The grand jackpot, the one displaying 5 or 6 figure amounts, triggered roughly once every 15,000 to 20,000 hours of total play across all linked machines. Individual players had virtually no chance of hitting it, but its presence on the screen created hope that justified continued play. During his 6 years working with Buffalo variants, David watched the par sheets evolve with each new release. Buffalo Diamond, Buffalo Extreme, Buffalo Power, each iteration introduced novel features, expanded reels, different bonus mechanics, but the return percentages consistently remained between 85 and 88%, and the bonus frequency to payout ratios consistently favored the house more aggressively than the original game. What disturbed David most was hearing players discuss how much they loved these new versions, how the additional features made the game more exciting, not recognizing they were celebrating their own accelerated losses. David's brother Marcus kept detailed records of his gambling sessions, documenting every machine, every bet level, every win and loss over a 3-year period. Marcus played original Buffalo at a locals casino that kept 2 of the old cabinets in a back corner, betting $2 per spin across 50 sessions of approximately 2 hours each. His total amount wagered reached roughly $84,000, and his total returned was $79,200, a net loss of $4,800. Then Marcus played Buffalo Gold at the same bet level across 50 equivalent sessions at a different casino that had removed their original Buffalo machines. His wagered amount totaled $86,000 because the game played slightly faster, and his total returned was $73,400, a net loss of $12,600. Same player, same bet amounts, same session lengths, and the newer version cost him an additional $7,800. That difference wasn't variance or bad luck. That was the mathematical result of a 6 percentage point reduction in return rate. The training David received when Buffalo Grand launched included specific instructions about responding to player questions regarding the game's odds compared to original Buffalo. The Aristocrat trainer explicitly told the technician team, if players ask whether the new versions are tighter than the original, redirect to features and entertainment value, don't engage with return percentage discussions. David remembered that exact phrasing because it confirmed what he'd begun to suspect throughout his career. The industry knew these games were worse for players. They designed them that way deliberately, and they trained floor staff to deflect any questions that might lead players toward that understanding. Now, before David reveals machine number 5, which combines multiple modern manipulation tactics in ways that represent the current cutting edge of predatory design, he needs you to understand the pattern you've been seeing. Lightning Link created the template for frequent low-value bonuses. Dragon Link refined the volatility model. Wheel of Fortune proved you could degrade a trusted brand without losing players. Buffalo demonstrated you could release progressively worse variants of a beloved game, and players would not only accept them, but prefer them, because the additional features disguised the worse math. Machine number 5 takes every one of those lessons and synthesizes them into a game that makes players feel like they're exercising skill and control, while the outcome remains entirely predetermined. And several floor managers David worked with privately admitted this particular game generated more player complaints about feeling manipulated than anything else on their floor. Yet they kept ordering more cabinets because the hold percentages exceeded every target the casino had set. Machine number 5 is Cash Eruption, and David wants you to pay attention to what happens the first time you trigger its primary feature, because that moment will tell you everything you need to know about how this game manipulates your psychology. The hold and spin activates, the screen explodes with animation, and suddenly the game presents you with a grid of covered symbols. The machine instructs you to pick positions to reveal prizes. Your hand moves toward the screen. You touch a symbol. It flips over and shows a credit value. You pick another. Another value appears. The machine celebrates each selection with unique sounds and graphics, and in that moment, your brain interprets what's happening as a skill-based activity where your choices determine your outcome. That interpretation is completely false. David watched a casino programmer demonstrate the pick feature mechanics during a training session for new game installations. And what that programmer revealed changed how David understood every modern slot machine. The game determines your total prize amount the instant the bonus triggers, before you touch the screen even once. The pick feature is pure theater. The prizes are distributed across the available selections in a pattern designed to make you believe your choices mattered, but you were receiving that exact payout regardless of which symbols you selected. If the algorithm assigned you a $60 bonus, you could pick the top left symbol first or the bottom right symbol first. You could pick in a diagonal pattern or random order, and you'd still receive exactly $60. The machine simply distributes that predetermined amount across whichever symbols you happen to choose, and it populates the remaining unpicked symbols with values that make you feel like you either chose wisely or missed better options. The base return to player percentage on Cash Eruption sits around 86 to 87% according to par sheets David reviewed. But what makes this machine particularly insidious is how the illusion of control extends playtime beyond what pure mechanical chance would sustain. Players develop superstitions about which symbols to pick. They convince themselves they've identified patterns, hotspots on the screen, timing tricks that improve outcomes. David encountered a player who'd created an elaborate system for picking symbols in specific sequences, convinced his method was increasing his returns. This player spent $4,500 over 2 months testing and refining his system. David later pulled this player's historical data from the casino management system, and his pick bonus results aligned exactly with the programmed probability distribution. His choices had changed nothing, but the illusion that they might had kept him playing far longer than he would have stayed at a purely mechanical game. The hold and spin component triggers every 120 to 180 spins, on average, which creates frequent engagement that feels rewarding until you calculate the cost. At $2 per spin, you're spending $240 to $360 to trigger a feature that pays an average of $25 to $60 based on thousands of recorded outcomes David documented. The machine programs near misses into the hold and spin itself, where you'll frequently land 5 special symbols when landing 6 would multiply your prize significantly. Those 5-symbol outcomes occur at rates that suggest deliberate programming rather than natural distribution. You're not getting unlucky. You're experiencing manufactured almost wins designed to make you believe the big payout is within reach. Cash Eruption represents the current generation of slot design philosophy, where every element serves to disguise the mathematical reality behind layers of interactivity, choice architecture, and psychological manipulation. The old mechanical three-reel slots simply spun and stopped. You won or lost, and the transaction was transparent. Modern games like Cash Eruption create elaborate narratives around each spin, bonus triggers that feel like separate events, pick features that suggest agency, and celebration graphics for outcomes that cost you more money than they returned. The casino isn't just taking your money anymore. It's making you complicit in the process by creating the illusion that your decisions influence results they'd already determined. David remembers the moment he fully understood how predatory this design had become. A player approached him on the floor excited, explaining that he'd figured out the optimal picking strategy for Cash Eruption. This player had photographed his bonus screens, tracked which positions revealed which values, and built what he believed was a data-driven approach to maximizing returns. David wanted to tell him the truth, that the game was showing him a theater production where he played the lead role in a script already written, but casino policy prohibited discussing programming details with players. So David smiled and wished him luck, and he watched this player return to the machine and lose another $300 while convinced his system was working. And if you think manufactured choice is psychologically manipulative, machine number 6 uses something even more insidious that tricks your brain at a neurological level, making you celebrate outcomes that represent pure financial losses. And the industry has a technical term for this tactic that they use in internal documents, but never in marketing materials. And once David explains how this works, you'll start recognizing it on nearly every modern slot machine you encounter. Because this isn't an isolated feature anymore, it's become the foundational design principle that guides how almost every new game gets programmed and approved for casino floors. Machine number 6 is Lock It Link, every variant, cats, diamonds, nightlife, all of them. And this game perfected something the industry calls losses disguised as wins, abbreviated in internal documentation as LDWs. David first encountered this term during a slot conference he attended in 2016, where a game designer from Scientific Games presented a session titled Optimizing Player Engagement Through Reward Response Calibration. The presentation never used the phrase losses disguised as wins in front of the audience, but the PowerPoint slides loaded on the presenter's laptop before the session started contained that exact terminology, and David photographed 3 slides that explained how celebration sounds and graphics are calibrated to trigger dopamine responses regardless of whether the player actually profited from the outcome being celebrated. The base return to player percentage on Lock It Link machines runs between 86 and 88% depending on denomination and location, which places it in the same category as Lightning Link and Dragon Link. But the psychological manipulation goes deeper because of how the game responds to your results. The hold and spin feature triggers approximately every 100 to 150 spins, which feels generous and keeps you engaged with frequent bonus activity. Most hold and spin results pay between 10 and 30 times your bet. If you're wagering $250 per spin, you're spending roughly $250 to $375 in base gameplay to trigger a bonus that pays $25 to $75. You're losing money in that exchange, possibly losing $200 to $300 net, but the machine doesn't acknowledge that mathematical reality. Instead, Lock It Link explodes with celebration. The screen fills with animated diamonds or cats or cash symbols depending on which variant you're playing. The speakers blast triumphant music at carefully calibrated volume. Levels. The cabinet lights pulse in synchronized patterns. Your credit meter increases from wherever it had fallen to a slightly higher number that's still below where you started the session. Every sensory input you receive tells you that you've won something significant, and your brain releases dopamine in response to those signals, even though a rational analysis of your bankroll would show you're substantially behind. This is losses disguised as wins operating at a neurological level, hijacking your reward system to make you feel successful during the process of losing money. David watched a woman named Jennifer play Lock It Link Diamonds over multiple sessions, and during one particular visit, he noticed she was photographing her bonus screens. When she cashed out, David asked if she was having a good day, and Jennifer showed him her phone with genuine excitement. She'd captured screenshots of 30 bonus triggers across 4 hours of play. She scrolled through them, enthusiastically pointing out the bigger wins, explaining which symbols she'd collected, describing the moments when she'd locked multiple positions and watched the prizes accumulate. David asked how much she'd started with and how much she was leaving with. Jennifer checked her ticket and her face changed. She'd arrived with $800 and she was cashing out $290. She'd lost $510, but until that moment, she'd believed she was having a winning session because of how the machine had celebrated her 30 bonuses. David later accessed Jennifer's player tracking data with her permission, and the numbers confirmed what the par sheets predicted. Her 30 bonus triggers had paid a combined total of $1,040, which sounds substantial until you account for the cost to generate them. At $250 per spin across 4 hours at roughly 600 spins per hour, she'd wagered approximately $6,000 total. Machine returned $5,400 across all outcomes, base game hits and bonuses combined, producing her $510 loss. But 23 of her 30 bonuses had paid less than 50 times her bet, meaning she'd spent $625 to $937.50 to trigger features that returned $62.50 to $125. Every single one of those outcomes received full celebration treatment with music, graphics, and animations designed to make her brain interpret the exchange as winning. Several slot attendants David worked with admitted privately that they felt uncomfortable watching players celebrate these bonuses, knowing the player was moving further behind with each trigger. One attendant named Rebecca told David she'd started calling Lock It Link the happiness trap, because players seemed genuinely joyful while losing money at rates that exceeded almost every other game on the floor. Rebecca had worked in casinos for 19 years, and she said the modern games bothered her in ways the older mechanical slots never had. The old games were honest, she told David. You pulled the handle, the reels stopped, you won or lost, and everyone understood the transaction. These new games lie to people's faces and make them smile while doing it. The psychological research supporting losses disguised as wins isn't secret. Academic papers published in journals like the Journal of Gambling Studies have documented how celebration sounds and visual effects can trigger reward responses, even when the outcome being celebrated represents a net loss. The casino industry reads this research carefully, and game designers incorporate the findings into their programming deliberately. They know the human brain struggles to maintain accurate accounting when sensory inputs contradict financial reality, and they've optimized their games to exploit that vulnerability. Machine number 7 is 88 Fortunes, and this game targets a specific demographic with surgical precision. According to David, it represents one of the most calculated examples of cultural marketing, combined with predatory mathematics he encountered during his entire career. The bright red cabinets decorated with gold Chinese symbols draw players who associate these visual elements with prosperity and luck, and the casino exploits that cultural connection ruthlessly. The base return to player percentage sits between 85 and 87%, according to par sheets David accessed, placing it among the tightest games on any floor. But what makes 88 Fortunes particularly problematic is the bet structure that forces players into higher wagers without clearly communicating the cost. The game uses a credit system where you must bet in increments that activate gold symbols, and most players don't realize they're wagering $3.88 or $4.88 per spin because the screen displays the amount in credits rather than dollars. David documented a regular player named Robert who played 88 Fortunes exclusively for 8 months, always betting maximum credits because he believed that's how you win the progressive jackpots. Robert kept meticulous records in a small notebook, convinced his system of tracking hot and cold cycles would eventually pay off. When David helped him calculate his actual losses, the number reached $17,600. Robert had hit the mini progressive 11 times and the minor progressive twice, wins that felt significant in the moment, but represented only a fraction of what he'd fed into the machine. The Foo Bat jackpot feature triggers approximately once every 250 to 300 spins, but actually winning any substantial progressive requires landing specific combinations at odds approaching 10,000 to 1. The game celebrates every Foo Bat trigger with gongs and golden animations, making players believe they're close to a major win. But the mathematical reality is that most triggers pay between 10 and 40 times the bet, while costing 200 to 300 times the bet to activate. Machine number 8 is Ultimate Firelink, and this is what David calls the culmination of every predatory tactic the industry has developed over the past decade. This game combines persistent state mechanics with manufactured scarcity and social pressure in ways that create genuine psychological addiction. Former floor managers told David this machine generated more player complaints about feeling manipulated than any other game. Yet casinos kept ordering more cabinets because the hold percentages exceeded every target. The orb collection mechanic creates artificial investment that players cannot psychologically abandon. You watch orbs accumulate across multiple spins, filling a meter that promises substantial rewards when complete, and every partial collection makes walking away feel like surrendering value you've already paid for. David accessed diagnostic data showing the game programmed near-complete collections at frequencies designed to maximize this sunk cost fallacy. You'll see 12 or 13 of 15 orbs required dozens of times before actually completing to 15, and each near miss resets your mental commitment to continue playing. The base return to player percentage operates between 84 and 86%, among the lowest figures David encountered for any mainstream game. But the persistent state mechanics created time-on-device metrics that casino management explicitly celebrated in performance reviews. Players stayed an average of 42% longer at Ultimate Firelink compared to standard slots, and they added credits an average of 3.7 times per session, nearly double the rate of other machines. David remembers a player named Michael who lost $11,000 in a single 6-hour session, chasing orb collections that stayed perpetually incomplete. Michael made 7 ATM trips that afternoon, each withdrawal representing another layer of desperation, another rationalization that the next $200 would finally complete the collection and justify everything he'd spent. The machine was performing exactly as programmed, extracting maximum revenue by exploiting psychological vulnerabilities that designers had deliberately engineered into every element of gameplay. Now you're past the halfway point in this list, and David needs to deliver on his promise. You've learned which games have the worst odds and the most aggressive psychological manipulation. You understand how Lightning Link, Dragon Link, Wheel of Fortune 4D, Buffalo Gold, Cash Eruption, Locket Link, 88 Fortunes, and Ultimate Firelink systematically extract money while creating illusions of fairness, frequency, choice, and winning. That knowledge protects you, but it doesn't give you an alternative if you're determined to gamble. So now David will tell you about 3 machines that actually give you a legitimate mathematical chance, games where the house edge still exists but operates honestly, and the first one isn't technically a slot machine at all, but it's the only game David would play with his own money, and when you understand why, you'll recognize the fundamental difference between gambling and being systematically harvested. Machine that actually pays. Number 1. Video Poker, 9x6. Jacks or better. This isn't technically a slot machine, and that's exactly why David would play it with his own money. The 9-6 designation means the machine pays 9 coins for a full house and 6 coins for a flush when playing maximum coins. And you need to verify this before sitting down, because many casinos offer worse pay tables that look identical. The return to player percentage on 9-6 jacks or better reaches 99.54%, with perfect strategy according to published mathematics that anyone can verify. David accessed par sheets for video poker machines throughout his 7 years, and unlike slots, these numbers matched exactly what independent gambling mathematicians published. There's no hidden programming, no weighted reels, no losses disguised as wins. The game deals cards from a standard 52 card deck using random number generation. You choose which cards to hold, and replacement. Cards come from the remaining deck. What makes video poker fundamentally different is that your decisions genuinely matter. Learning proper strategy takes effort. You can find charts legally, bring them to the machine, and reference them for every hand. David watched his colleague Steven play video poker exclusively for 2 years, betting $1.25 per hand. and Stevens' tracked results showed a 2.3% loss rate over that period, almost exactly matching the expected house edge with near-perfect play. Machine that actually pays. Number 2, Classic Wheel of Fortune, original quarter 3 reel. Not the 3D or 4D versions David warned you about earlier, but the old mechanical cabinets you'll find tucked in corners of older casinos, sometimes in banks of 4 or 6 machines, often surrounded by their flashier modern descendants that betrayed everything the original represented. David serviced these machines during his first year as a technician, and the pair sheets showed return to player percentages between 92 and 94%, 4 to 9 percentage points higher than the modern versions exploiting the same trusted brand name. The game mechanics offer complete transparency. 3 mechanical reels, single pay line across the center, pay table printed directly on the machine glass. No hidden denomination tricks, no credit meters disguising actual bet amounts, no complicated bonus features with obscured mathematics. The wheel spin bonus triggers approximately once every 150 spins and pays fairly when it hits. You can see exactly how many positions pay each amount on the physical wheel, can calculate your expected return before you ever insert money. David's friend Angela played Classic Wheel of Fortune exclusively for 18 months, documented every session, and her annual loss rate came to 8.7%, matching almost perfectly with the documented return percentage. These machines are disappearing as casinos replace them with higher hold modern versions, so if you find one, that's where David says your entertainment dollar goes furthest. Machine that actually pays, number 3. Original Buffalo, 2008 version. Not Buffalo Gold, not Buffalo Grand, not any variant released after 2013, but the original 2008 version that built this franchise's reputation before the manufacturer realized they could exploit that reputation for profit. Some locals' casinos still keep 1 or 2 original cabinets in back corners, and those are the machines David's brother Marcus would drive across town to play. The par sheets David reviewed throughout 2010 and 2011 showed return to player percentages around 93%, and the free games feature triggered every 200 to 250 spins while paying substantial amounts frequently enough that players could sustain longer sessions without catastrophic losses. When the bonus hit, it genuinely paid. David documented free game sessions regularly returning 80 to 200 times the triggering bet, and the massive wins with stacked. Wilds and retriggers occurred often enough to be realistic possibilities rather than mathematical impossibilities designed to maintain false hope. Marcus kept meticulous records comparing original Buffalo to Buffalo Gold at identical bet levels across equivalent time periods, and the original cost him $4,800 over 50 sessions, while the Gold version cost him $12,600. Same player, same discipline, and the original treated him $7,800 better. That difference represents honest programming versus predatory design, and it's why David says if you're determined to play slots despite everything he's revealed, find an original Buffalo and avoid every variant that came after. So let's review what David revealed. The 8 machines you should avoid are Lightning Link, with its near-miss programming and denomination confusion, Dragon Link with its extreme volatility trap, Modern Wheel of Fortune 4D that betrays, the brand's trusted legacy, Buffalo Gold, and all variants that systematically degraded what made the original fair, Cash Eruption with its illusion of skill and control, Locket Link that perfected losses disguised as wins, 88 Fortunes with its hidden bet costs and cultural exploitation, and Ultimate Fire Link that represents the darkest evolution of predatory slot design. The 3 machines that actually give you a fighting chance are 9-6 jacks or better video poker, where your decisions genuinely matter, and return rates can reach 99.54% with perfect strategy, Classic Mechanical Wheel of Fortune with its honest 92 to 94% returns, and complete transparency, and original Buffalo from 2008 that treated players fairly before the manufacturer weaponized the brand's popularity. David spent 7 years inside the casino industry, accessed thousands of pair sheets, watched countless players lose money to machines, specifically programmed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities, and eventually couldn't stay silent about what he'd witnessed. The casino floor isn't designed for your entertainment. It's engineered for your extraction. But now you have the knowledge that casino operators spent millions ensuring you'd never access. Walk past those 8 predatory machines. Find the 3 honest games if you're determined to gamble. And remember that the house always has an edge, but knowledge gives you the power to minimize the damage and avoid the traps they've engineered specifically for players who don't know any better.